Hello and welcome to another wonderful E3 conversation with your friends at Xbox Enthusiast. My name is Jamie. I'm joined by Chris, Steve, and Kendra, and we're going to continue our conversation from our Microsoft conference review, which you can check out on our YouTube page. But today we're going to be specifically talking about the Project Scorpio announcement, which is going to be pretty big, we hope. Before we hop into what we think about it, we'll just kind of go over what we know so far. It will feature 8 cores, 320 gigabytes of memory bandwidth, and all popular 6 teraflops of performance they've been mentioning. It will feature uncompressed 2K gaming, which means it won't be upscaled to 2160. It's going to be full and compressed, and it will target 60 frames per second performance in what Microsoft is calling a no-compromise experience, and it will support VR. Also, they mentioned it's going to be backwards compatible with all Xbox One and Xbox One S games, so what they called leaving no one behind. So, I mean, that's just the general rundown of the Scorpio. So I guess first, to kick things off, I find it interesting because they say it's coming out holiday 2017, and they're not calling it a new console. This is going to be an expansion of the current Xbox One family, but to me, I think it's a brand new console generation. We'll start with that. Is it too soon to launch a brand new console?
Steve, you want to go first?
It's you up. Go for it, my friend.
Go, Chris. Go.
Okay, first off, just a small little note. You said 2K gaming.
I meant 4K. My bad. Sorry.
just so anybody who's watching
that makes
this
much more sense.
Doesn't burn their house down. It is 4K capable. To the question of is it a new generation? I feel like that Microsoft, at least their vision right now, is no more generations. Now, we can get into the discussion of whether this is a good idea or a bad idea or not, but I see them moving more into the line of something like what Apple does with the iPhone or the iPad, where there will be iterations on the console maybe every 3 to 4 years without excommunicating or just completely dropping the previous platform. So I do agree they're going to treat this like a brand new console launch, just as if it were a new generation. I believe it'll come out in November, just like all their launches do, and there'll be a ton of hype around it, and I think they will treat it that way. But I do think that in the grand scheme of things, they are looking at this as just expanding the Xbox One family of game systems. So.
Okay. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I think that the iPhone reference is probably quite a good one. It's kind of like if the Xbox One is the iPhone 6, I think this is going to be like the iPhone 6S. Now, Phil Spencer did actually say in when he was announcing it that while the console ecosystem is stronger than ever, well, if it was stronger than ever, then why are they releasing this half step? and they're also saying that this console is the next step change for gamers and developers and must deliver true 4K gaming and high fidelity VR. Which does that actually say that we're going to get VR on this system? Are we going to get Oculus, or is Microsoft going to do its own thing? But I just think the amount of power this thing has got, it's got to be like a new console, hasn't it? I mean, unless it is purely going to be 4K games on it, that it will not that it will not play 1080p games, but it's as though, say, Halo 6, when that comes out, is that going to be 1080p 60 frames a second on Xbox One and 4K 60 frames per second on Scorpio, or will there be kind of a mismatch where you could have a better 1080p on a Scorpio? We just don't know at the moment.
Or do you get Halo 6 and Halo 6S?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. Well, Kendra, are you excited for 4K gaming? Lock 60 frames?
The 60 frames, yes. The 4K gaming, I really don't think we're at that point just yet. I mean, until they can get it together, it takes them forever anyway to do 1080p. Think of how much space and how much time it's going to take them to do 4K eventually. I mean, it just seems like something that's a good idea on paper to be able to do, but it doesn't seem like something that it would be great in practice. We already see developers are struggling now to try to keep up and maintain with what they're already doing now. And like companies like Ubisoft are constantly putting out games that are broken and falling behind. So we can go up in resolution and everything, but what do we lose? And that's the thing that I've yet to see.
But the bigger issue with that is the performance to be able to do that. And this new console is over 4 times more powerful than the current Xbox One, and 4K is about four times the resolution, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
and I think performance
but
is.
That's my point. It's.
Go ahead, Kendra.
Well, see, that's my point. It takes more time to do this. I mean, the length of time it is taking to create games for this generation has already been stretched out. It's more people. It's more expensive. And, like, they keep raising these bars. And why? I mean, I get we want better resolution and we want better frame rates and everything, but they still haven't mastered what we have going on right now.
But I think the issue with that is the fact that we're trying to get 1080p 60 frames per second out of the Xbox One, and it's not quite powerful enough to do it really consistently, you know, which is why they're moving to this other step of doing the Scorpio, and hopefully it'll be able to do that.
Well,
sure. I mean,
and we're still seeing problems with that. I mean, they get to 1080p, but they sometimes struggle with the 60 frames per second.
Yeah, but again, I think Steve's right. The reason they struggle isn't with development; it's with the actual power on the box. This is the same thing with a lot of people refer to the PC as the master race. In that, if you have a completely spec'd out kit, you can run pretty much any game that's available there, but also on console at an Ultra HD rate. So if you have something like, say, Fallout that you can run on an Xbox One and a PS4 and it works fine, you run that on a spec'd out PC and it's going to look 10 times better. It's going to play, it's just a better overall experience. And I think that what we're getting to is I think that Phil wants, we've talked about this where the idea is marrying these two things, PC gaming and console gaming. I completely feel like that what we'll see is we'll see games coming out. And so coming back to the Halo reference, I completely see a world where Halo comes out and Halo is locked at 60 frames, 1080p on the Xbox One, but it's just an ultra edition of it. Basically, you're just moving sliders up, but on Scorpio, you can have that jump up to a 4K resolution, with 60 frames locked, and because it has the power to process it, it's exactly the same game, exactly the same experience, but you're getting a better graphic fidelity because the console is able to push it harder. The same as if Halo came out on a PC today, it would look and play better than it does on the Xbox One.
My issue with this, though, is that the whole point of the consoles are that they are a closed system, right? It's not like a PC where you have minimum requirements and recommended requirements, and you can spec it up to, like, I think it was Bethesda announced some version of one of their games that's going to be 4K and can run at like 180 hertz or something crazy like that. That's possible with a PC, but with a console, it's supposed to be a closed system. It's supposed to be one spec, nothing else, and then the developers can tweak their game to perfection for that specific amount of power. Now, if you're adding another console into the mix, you're getting to kind of like the PC level where they've got to make varying versions of this game for varying powers of consoles. Now, if that's the case, like a same spec Xbox 360, if you had a PC that was running the exact same power as the Xbox 360, the games looked better on the 360 because the developers could tweak it to that exact performance, where on the PC it didn't look quite as good. Obviously, PC's got much more powerful than that, but if you're looking power to power exactly the same, it's easier on a closed system because they can tweak it perfectly for that.
Sure, and I think that's one of the things when PlayStation Neo, which Sony said is happening, that's one of the things a lot of people were complaining about, and developers saying now we have a whole other version of this game to make. Another thing that I'm thinking about, right now, when you play a game on your Xbox One, you have to install it. And it's going to take, some games 50, 60 gigabytes of space. If we're doing 4K, like uncompressed 4K resolution, 60 frames per second, I can't imagine what the file size is going to be that we're going to have to install. It's going to be like a half day to install this stupid thing. And even if, let's say we go off the Xbox One S, 2 terabytes of hard drive space, we'll install, 4 games? Maybe?
Yeah.
And then we're out of space.
Yeah, so space is definitely an issue, and I think they're addressing that with a 2 terabyte drive that they're putting in the Slim. But yeah, you're exactly right. 4K games are going to be huge because of the changeover with the generation and the move to digital. They've allowed the files to be uncompressed. So whereas companies would spend extra time and money to get those games compressed down so that they'd fit on a disc, that limitation is gone now, especially with the addition of Blu-ray. So they don't even care about compressing it really much anymore. Yeah, I mean it's a huge issue. I mean 4 times the resolution, could ultimately mean up to 4 times the size. And when you have a game like Fallout's like 40 gigs, right? So I mean, if you're telling me that there's a possibility of having a game that's 120 gigs just by itself, that's crazy.
It won't be 4 times the size because the game engine won't be 4 times the size. It's just the textures and stuff like that that's 4 times the size. The other thing though is that when you have games that are using that much space, it's not just that the hard drive needs to be bigger. The hard drive needs to read an awful lot faster, and that's a major issue on the Xbox One at the moment, because on PlayStation 4, I've got a mate who's got a PS4 and he's got an SSD drive in it, and that thing flies along. You barely get any texture pop up because it reads it so quick. Now, playing on Xbox One, we get quite a bit of texture pop up because the hard drive doesn't read fast enough. Now, this Xbox One Scorpio doesn't just need a bigger hard drive, it needs a much faster drive as well.
Solid state. Right. But now with solid state, I know solid state drives are a little more expensive.
They're massively more expensive.
Right.
Massively more expensive. So a 500 gig 7200 hard drive is probably going to cost you, I don't know in America, but about 50 quid over here. But a 500 gig SSD drive over here is like about 500 quid. Yeah. It's like almost 10 times as expensive.
Yeah.
Sure. And honestly, to hop off of that, if they go with a solid state drive because they need it to run faster, it's going to be more expensive. And they're talking about pushing, 4K 60 frames per second. Right now, like on PC, 4K graphics cards are the popular thing now. But I mean, they're extremely demanding on resources, and most PC graphics cards that can handle 4K at a decent frame rate are pushing $400. So I mean, this thing, the price for this thing, if it's got a decent sized solid state drive and a decent 4K graphics card, I can't imagine what this thing is going to cost.
Well, at that point, you also approach for PC.
So, I mean, I guess right now they came out, so the Xbox One S is $299. And they're going to have to charge a pretty penny for the Scorpio, but they're trying to sell it to people like us who always want the best tech, keep up with everything. But how much is going to be too much? Because I'm assuming they're going to lose money on each one they sell starting off with these things. But how much is going to be too much for this thing when they sell it?
Are they going to do that though? But I mean, they did that with the original Xbox. They lost money on every Xbox. At the start, they lost money on every Xbox. Xbox 360 started out pretty much cost, didn't it? And then as soon as they were able to change the chipsets and whatever, that made it significantly cheaper, and they made a bundle of cash on that. But this one, surely well, I cannot see it being less than $500, and I imagine it's going to be $600, possibly even $700. Who knows?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Chris, you gonna say something?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, and I think price is going to be important. You know, the other side of this is VR, which I don't know if we're going to jump into VR in a minute,
Sure.
but you know, if you're building a platform to really push VR, you're also then looking to sell, you know, VR equipment as well, and from what we heard, I'm not 100% sure that they're going to go with an Oculus for their VR. And what really kind of stood out was in the video, the little video package at the end of the press conference, Todd Howard popped on, and he basically said in so many words, we're glad that somebody's making a console where we can bring, you know, the VR experience to consoles. Now, at the Bethesda's press conference on Sunday night, they announced that Fallout VR was coming out next year, and the only platform they announced it for was Vive.
Vive, yeah.
So if you're telling me that Oculus Rift is able to play it, they should have said that. And the fact that they didn't, but Todd Howard says that VR is going to be on the Xbox Scorpio, actually leads me to believe that possibly Microsoft is working on their own VR product.
Okay, because what I took from that is that they're using the Vive for their product. Because
that would be even
Todd Howard, like him saying, Fallout 4 is exclusive on Vive, and then he said it's coming to Xbox One. So in my mind, at least, it clicks saying Vive is going to be on.
Well, I don't think he said exclusive. I just think he said it's come. I just think he only mentioned Vive. I'd have to go back and watch. I don't think he specifically said it's only exclusively coming to Vive. I think he just said, and it's going to be available next year on the Vive platform.
It could well be a timed exclusive, kind of Rise of the Tomb Raider style as well, where HTC contact them and say, look, we'll have it exclusive on ours for a year, and then you can put it out to whoever you want.
Yeah. But circling back to price, you know, that VR actually for me plays a part in it, and the reason I say that is because now that I've had a chance to experience VR, I'm completely sold on VR, and I want that to be like the upgrade to Scorpio for me is going to be, I don't have a 4K television. So the 4K, even though I know in the future that will be important, 4K is not really important to me right now. I have nothing to output it to.
But do you have a VR headset at the moment either?
But no.
Exactly.
But this is my point. Is that if they're selling me hardware, and the primary reason that I want to upgrade is for the VR capabilities, like you have to figure VR into the price as well. So if we're saying the console is going to get up to $700, you know, a VR platform is not going to be more than or less than probably, you know, $400 at the very minimum. So
now, is Sony last night for the PlayStation VR? Did they say it was $299?
No, $399.
Okay.
Yeah, it's $399.
Yeah, and I think all consensus is that it's a lesser platform than what's available on Vive or on Oculus, just because, you know, the PS4 is pushing it. So, you know, you would think that if Microsoft is going to have something compatible with Fallout, which is coming out on Vive, that they're going to at least be at the $400 or $500 range by itself. So if you give me a $500 VR and a $700 console, now I'm $1,200 into what they're considering the next generation next year. That's a price investment. I don't know that I'm willing to make. So I think price is going to be important. I think they're going to have to get it down. I mean, I said, I think we asked on one of the shows that we did. I mean, I think it has to be $599 at the very most, but I think it's got to be $499 to be consumer friendly. I think you go over that $500 mark and you're missing the consumers, the people that buy the actual consoles. People that spend that much money build their own PC. So.
But like James said, it's not for your average consumer. It's for people like us who are proper hardcore gamers, you know? I mean, we're looking at changing our TV later in the year, and we're going to get a 4K one, just because if you're going to get a new TV now, you might as well get a 4K. Right. Now, I have no interest in VR whatsoever. I've got astigmatism in my eye, so I can't see 3D stuff like that. It just doesn't work for me. But a 4K TV, that interests the hell out of me. So it is just going to be probably about 500 quid over here, but 600-700 quid in the States, and that's it for me, and I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but a TV is multi-purpose, right? I mean, it isn't like I can, walk around the house with my VR on and have it like it's only for one specific experience. A TV has multi-purpose, so you're investing in something that's going to be utilized a lot more. But I
could have gone with your explanation when I was trying to persuade the wife about that, but yeah.
Look, so the only thing that I'll say about your hardcore argument is that I agree that right now, and I would probably say any hardware launch is typically for the hardcore. Most of the general audience or the mass market come in the second or the third year as you see iterations like the Slim or as you see price drops. But I mean, this is the next Xbox. Like Microsoft's vision is for at some point in the near future for the Scorpio to be the lead platform. Like Xbox One Slim will eventually, just like the iPhones, of early years, are going to kind of phase out. So yeah, right now they can probably sell it for a premium, but that is a consumer product. They are still wanting to move a product that is going to take its place in the living room. So price is going to be important. I think if they go over $500, I think that they're making a mistake.
Sure, but even if they go $500, I mean, and then you add the VR, I mean, you're pushing $1,000.
Of course.
For VR and for the system itself. But I guess my next question, having multiple consoles on the market, Xbox One, Slim, and then the Scorpio, we all know eventually Scorpio is going to take over as the official new console, but they said no one gets left behind. But how long do you think that's going to stay true? How soon are they going to phase out the Xbox One, Xbox One S? And then how soon are we going to start getting Scorpio exclusive games? Because they told us that Scorpio is going to be backwards compatible and play everything Xbox One and Xbox One S can play, but they never once said there wouldn't be Scorpio specific games that won't play in the older stuff. So how long till that happens? How long until they feel comfortable enough to phase out this generation?
This reminds me of the DS and how they said, how Nintendo said that they weren't going to discontinue the Game Boy.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think you'll see exclusive games at launch. I don't think that they launched the Scorpio without saying you can only experience this on Scorpio. I mean, obviously anything VR is going to only be Scorpio. But I could see them having something at launch being like, this is 4K gaming, which we really don't see a lot of. I think we got to be careful. The universal statement that they make, or no console left behind. I think the idea of that is that, and I think in even interviews since the briefing, Phil's just reiterated the idea of just your stuff being there where you are when you play. That's why Xbox Anywhere is a big thing, where you can have it, all your game saves and everything on your PC. Whenever you take your Scorpio out of the box and you plug it up and you log in with your gamer tag, every game that you've ever bought digitally digitally is going to be accessible right there on the dashboard, download, ready to play. I just think that the idea of having the idea of no console left behind is that you just no longer have to worry about losing the content that you buy. I think this focuses on software, not on hardware.
Chris, do you reckon that there will be when Scorpio launches, do you think that you will be able to play games on Scorpio at 1080p that look better than on Xbox One? Do you think Scorpio is only going to be 4K, or do you think that they'll not only allow 1080p gaming on it, but that it will look significantly better than 1080p gaming on the Xbox One?
Yeah, no. I believe you'll be able to play any of the games that they're releasing on Scorpio, and I do believe that they'll look better. I mean, heck, they have high dynamic range for the Xbox One Slim, which it brings the colors of the current games better. So even games today that you're going to play on the Slim in August are going to technically look better side by side than their standard Xbox One. So yeah, I 100% think if you're playing a game side by side with an Xbox One and Xbox Scorpio, you're going to get a better experience, crisper graphics, quicker load times, less pop-up, that kind of stuff, just due to the processing power of the machine. I definitely think that will be there. And yeah,
but do you think it will be a significant step? Do you think that it will be that that games on the Scorpio have like a setting for 1080p where, for instance, you get, I don't know, twice as many trees or something on the side of a racetrack than you do on Xbox One?
Okay, so I'll answer that question with a game. So I think that there is a possibility that we don't get Crackdown 3 until next fall. There's no reason to have it right now. They didn't announce it. They just announced it was going to be pushed to 2017. There is a chance it comes early, but let's just say hypothetically it launches in November right alongside Scorpio. I could see that game coming out and having an Ultra HD mode and then a standard mode where it outputs to 4K. You're going to have and understand that we don't have to do anything. If you buy the Scorpio and you download the game, or if you buy the disc and you put it in, if you're on Scorpio, it's going to automatically know that this is the version that you're playing, and it's going to have the Ultra HD version. But you can take that same disc and put it into your Xbox One, and it's going to know, okay, this is an Xbox One, this is the scaled back version of the same game.
So very much like apps on the iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the iPhone iPad comparison is the best comparison we can give to what they're doing. It's going to be universal. It's going to work everywhere. But if you have it, it's going to be better. The same way that you can do Quantum Break, right? So Quantum Break plays like it plays on the Xbox One regardless. But if you have a completely spec'd out PC and you download Quantum Break, you have the option to put all the sliders on max, and in a very capable PC runs Quantum Break better than it does on Xbox One. It's just the way that it is. So I see it being a similar kind of function.
Sure, and the one thing I'm afraid of, to make another comparison, is the 3DS to the new 3DS, which is like an upgraded version, where it runs games slightly better, and they only have 2 exclusive games for it, but you've got those in between games, like Hyrule Warriors Legends. They say, oh, it plays on both, it runs great on both. That is garbage, because I've got a new 3DS, game runs awesome, super smooth, looks great, no problems. And then you see people play it on a normal 3DS. That thing runs awful. The frame rate is terrible. There's a lot more pop in. Just distance isn't as good. Like, even though they say it technically runs on the old hardware, they shouldn't tell you that, because it does, but it really doesn't. And I'm afraid that might happen with future games if they're not careful.
I think it's. I mean, I think it's gonna happen. I mean, I'm not saying next year. I think next year will be fine. But in 3 years' times, when they're pushing, 4K is more accessible and people are pushing 4K videos. I'll give you an example. I like to play Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes on my iPad, and I have a little iPad Mini, a first gen, and then I have an iPad Pro. And when I play it on my iPad Mini, it literally looks like a stop motion cartoon, because it just does not play. Now it downloads, and I mean it technically plays, but it is a horrible, horrible, horrible experience, and that's because it's a first-gen iPad Mini. I play it on my iPad Pro, and it just sings. It's super fast, super clear. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. So I mean it's gonna happen if we're going to an iterative console cycle, which looks like what Microsoft is doing. In 3, 4, 5 years times, the games that are for the first gen Xbox One are just going to be of lesser quality. There's no way that you can continue to progress and that not happen.
Sure, and I mean, making the comparison to the iPhone, do you think because of the iPhone and because of the iPad, the general public is used to this? So if they know they've got an Xbox One, Xbox One Slim, and the game doesn't run as well, they'll just be like, oh, I need to upgrade. I mean, do we have it in the mindset of the general public now that updates of hardware is just normal?
For phones, yes.
Right, but with the thing, I guess the difference between phones and consoles, with phones, most of the time you go to Verizon or Sprint or whoever, and they say you can upgrade your phone every 2 years, and we'll give you a discount and all this stuff, and so you don't really realize how much that phone actually costs, because they put you on a monthly payment plan. By the time you pay it off, it's time to get another phone, and they put you on a brand new monthly payment plan, on and on and on it goes. But with consoles, it's a little bit different because you're paying that entire cost up front. So is it going to be harder
and I don't
for people to understand that? Do you think that's going to cause?
I didn't hear you.
No, do you think that's going to cause an issue?
Yeah, I think it will. I think that's going to cause a lot of issues because we're used to paying. I mean, we're used to the phones, but like you were saying, because they're subsidized to us, we're willing to shell that out. But you're going to start asking people, the public, to start shelling out $500 every 3 years, and I don't think that's going to work for consoles. I mean, phones have far more uses than consoles do, and they're perceived to cost less.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think that when you ask if the mass market is used to this iterative service, I think that they are, in the way that their cell phone, just like you said, their cell phone expires. You have a contract, it expires, you have the subsidized cost, you come back in. The flip side of that is I don't think people turn over iPads the same way. I think people will typically have an iPad for 3, 4, 5 years before finally upgrading, for the simple purpose of they have to pay the full cost of an iPad as opposed to not having to pay the full cost of a phone. I think that this is going to be probably the trickiest part for Microsoft, which is marketing when it comes next year, because you're going to have an Xbox on the shelf, an Xbox One on the shelf right next to an Xbox One Scorpio, trying to differentiate the two, making sure that people understand what they are, and when I say people, I mean obviously the mass consumer. We're gonna know exactly what both of them are, and most gamers will, but getting that across to a mass consumer is going to be important, because if they're looking, they're like, oh well, the Xbox Scorpio here is $600, this PlayStation Neo is $500, or this Xbox One Slim is $300. Like, what's the difference between the three, and where do I go? So.
I mean, I think when the consumers see it on the shelf, the average consumer is going to look at the S, and by that point, the S is going to be $200. And so what's going to happen is they're just going to go and probably just grab the S because it's going to be good enough, but it won't be the absorbent price that the other consoles will be.
But then it goes to who it's aimed at again, doesn't it? In the the Scorpio, as we've said, is more for hardcore gamers, and the S and the standard Xbox One are more for people who game a little, you know.
Sure, but I mean, if they want to increase their hold on the market, because as people talk about Sony and Microsoft, Sony's outselling Xbox Ones 2-1. I think there's 20 Xbox Ones and 40 PS4s. If they want to get more of that market, more of that mind share, they're gonna have to extend outside of just hardcore gamers. They're gonna have to find a way to grab that general public and bring at least some of them in too, if they want to make the market grow.
But this console isn't the one for that. Surely a cheaper Xbox One is the way to get those people in. Also, I think the other issue for this console isn't so much consumers, but it's developers. It's fine for the AAA developers like the Coalition, like Bethesda, who can throw shed loads of money at this, but the kind of the lower end AAA guys, kind of like Avalanche with Just Cause 3 and people like that, where they have to not only develop a game for 1080p but develop it for 4K, and once they've shipped the game, they also have to, when it comes to doing updates, they've got to pay twice to get it updated on the original Xbox and to get it updated on the Scorpio. I think I think this increase in power is great for the big boys in game development, but when it comes to the smaller guys and the indie guys, where they have to shell out twice for updates to be authorized, it could be really crippling for them.
Sure, and
I don't know that Microsoft would do that. I mean, I like a double. I think that they're
going to have to check it on two machines. You're not telling me that they run the update system at the moment to make a profit for themselves. They run the update system so that I am sure that they would run that at cost, so it covers their cost to check that it works on the system and then it gets approved. Okay, so there's no way they could do that for the same amount of money on two consoles.
But there is, if the infrastructure is completely the same. What we're saying is that the infrastructure in itself is exactly the same. So you shouldn't have to test it on multiple SKUs. I mean, if that's the case, then you can make the argument that you have to pay double now to get it to be approved on Xbox One, or original console, launch console, and now the Xbox One Slim. But the infrastructure itself is exactly the same. They are not going to change the infrastructure when Scorpio comes out. It's going to be exactly the same. I think the whole OS is going to be 100% the same. And so I don't see them double charging for that.
Sure, and I think that all comes back to that whole no console left behind, because what they've said before is the Xbox Scorpio is going to be fully backwards compatible with everything for the for the One and the Slim. So if an indie developer makes something for the One, technically, if it's the same infrastructure, it should run on the Scorpio without any issues. The only time it's really going to become a problem is when they want to take full advantage of the Scorpio. And if Microsoft really wants to push the Scorpio, saying we want all our games to run with more push on the Scorpio to show off what it can do, maybe Microsoft can help those smaller developers to, at least at the beginning, to show them how to do it, to help out with costs, things like that, just because they really want to push this system. So maybe some of the smaller guys can't afford it, and so maybe they'll find a way to, kind of like what they do with ID at Xbox, start up some kind of new program where they can train them and help them to make games that'll take full advantage of Scorpio.
But this is what I'm saying with kind of the low-end AAA guys like Avalanche, like Deep Silver, like Crytek, people like that who, let's be honest, they are struggling financially at the moment, but they want to put out AAA games. If they want to put AAA games out, they need it to be on Scorpio and for it to be 4K ready or possibly even VR. And that's where... Also, if it's going to be running on VR, you do need to check that it runs on VR, not just on the original Xbox One. So you are going to be paying more to get these updates authorized.
Sure, but I don't think that every game on Scorpio is going to work on VR. Just like with PlayStation VR, they only have specific games made for that. I have a feeling Xbox VR, whatever they call it, is going to be the same way. I don't think people expect every game on Scorpio to work with VR.
No, I'm literally just trying to play devil's advocate about the update system. I don't think every game is going to be VR, and as someone who can't use VR, I really hope that not every game is VR. And I don't know if we can talk about the Ubisoft conference at some point, but the Star Trek VR game they showed looked kind of fun, but the graphics on that, man,
it's horrible.
Kind of like original Xbox level graphics, even if it is running VR,
Sure.
Yeah.
And Kendra, it looked like you were going to say something.
Well, what I was going to say is, couldn't just making a good game be enough? I mean, you can have all the bells and whistles, but if the game is crud because they spent that time trying to put on all this extra stuff, instead of making a good game to have on both consoles without all of the VR and the high-end specs, it would be kind of pointless. It would be fruitless.
But after a couple of years of the Scorpio being around, surely that's what people are going to expect. People are going to expect all the games to be 4K. Are going to expect for some of them to be running VR. It is going to become more of a standard thing. I mean, it's not going to happen straight away. Like the first year of Scorpio is very much going to be a case of, well, this game's 1080p on Xbox One and you can play it at 4K on Scorpio. But give it a couple of years, surely it's going to be the other way around.
Sure, but I think with VR, I mean, it's so new that they're not really pushing graphics yet. They're just trying to push the physics engines and the systems to get those in place. And like you said, in a few years, once they have that stuff pretty much nailed down and tweaked, and they know how to get that to run smoothly, then they'll start working on the graphic side to make that push that a little bit harder. Because from all the VR stuff they've shown, yesterday and the day before, graphically and even gameplay-wise, nothing really impressed me. Like, did you guys? Was it Ubisoft, or they were playing that game where everyone was an eagle and they were flying around and they showed people and they were just going like this the whole time?
It looked like an iPhone game.
It didn't, like, graphically. It didn't look that good. Gameplay-wise, it didn't look fun to me. It's more of a proof of concept.
It's a tech demo, isn't it, more than anything else?
Yeah.
And I think when VR launches, PlayStation VR, Xbox VR, Vive, whatever we get, everything that comes out, at least probably 90% of it, is going to be that way.
Yeah. So here, and I don't know how much more you have to go into. So here's my understanding of where Microsoft wants to go.
And with that, we are out.
I think the focus is going back to PC games. I think that what Microsoft wants to do is create a platform that is basically, and I've said this in the last podcast we did, is to really marry the two, where you have a fully powered PC in your living room. I even went as far as to say I think Scorpio will launch with a mouse and a keyboard when it comes out. But so I think that the brand, I think that the whole development cycle changes, and I think that what they're getting back to is letting people develop games where they want to on the PC. And because the infrastructure for Xbox One is now more aligning with Windows 10, and more specifically, Scorpio will align with Windows 10 from the start. I think that they're letting PC developers just build PC games that will literally just be compatible with the Xbox One platform.
You're not possibly suggesting that Phil Spencer lied when he said, while the console ecosystem is stronger than ever, are you?
I mean, no.
Surely Phil wouldn't do that to us.
No. I mean, it is stronger than ever, but I just look. You can't argue that Steam, for better or worse, Steam is the best video game. I don't even know what to call it. Service available. There's just so much on there, and it's easier for developers to get their games on there, and it's basically a universal platform. And I think that that's kind of what Microsoft wants to jump into. Jumping back on VR, I could see a world where you could literally plug up any VR to the Xbox Scorpio because it's a PC. Vive works on PC. Oculus Rift works on PC. Why not buy whatever VR you want, plug it into your Xbox Scorpio, and now you're having VR in the way that you want to have it. I just think the idea is that Microsoft is turning the Xbox into a PC, or vice versa. The PC into an Xbox. Either way, I just think that the whole idea where we're going with Scorpio and into the future is more of an idea of PC, where you have a console, it's going to play everything in a couple of years. If you want to have the best that you can have, you're going to need to update drivers or whatever on a PC. In this case, you would be buying a new console. But I do believe that is the focus of where Xbox is going.
Sure. Okay. Well, so far today we've covered hardware, price, some backwards compatibility, VR. Is there anything else you guys want to hit on today with Xbox Scorpio?
So you'd be able to plug your PSVR into it, right?
I mean, I don't know why you'd waste your time, but yeah, I guess hypothetically, sure.
Sure. Steve, anything to add?
I'm pretty sure you could plug the PlayStation VR into it. I don't think it would work, though. I think it'll be interesting to see how Sony counters it, because it is rumoured that the Scorpio is significantly more powerful than the PS4K, PlayStation Neo, whatever you want to call it. You do have to wonder whether the reason they left it out of this conference is because they heard the rumoured specs of the Scorpio. So when that does make an appearance, it'll be interesting to see where it places itself alongside Scorpio.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kendra, any final thoughts?
This feels more like a boot to the next generation, like it's a reset. With all the bad press the Xbox One had, this feels like they're going to just move us a little further down the line and reset everything.
Sure. And honestly, all I know is that this time next year, E3 is going to be crazy, because not only are they going to be showing off, Xbox One and PlayStation 4 stuff, next year's E3 is going to be huge on PlayStation Neo and on Xbox Scorpio. So it's pretty much going to be like the launch of a brand new console generation, because we know
VR should be established a bit more then as well.
Right, absolutely.
I'd imagine we're going to get a shed load more VR games announced next year, because it will be a bit more of an established platform.
Yep.
Right. And I mean, most of the companies kind of dabbled in VR this year, just kind of mentioning one here and there. But I agree. I think next year probably half of each person's conference is probably going to be dedicated just to VR, because, I mean, that's, like you guys said, that's where things are going. So it should be interesting.
What do we think the name? Do we think the name's going to be? In the way, do you think it will keep the One branding?
If they want to, because
right,
because right now they're trying to establish Xbox One as a family. So I could see them keeping the name Xbox One. I don't know what else they would call it. I mean, I have no idea. Possibly.
If they are going to call it Xbox One something, I don't think they can call it Xbox One Scorpio, because if they've got Xbox One S, I don't think you can go Xbox One Scorpio. Yeah.
Xbox One Plus.
Right. Xbox One Premium, or it all depends on what's
Xbox One A.
Chris, do you have any good ideas for what it may be called?
When does Chris ever have good ideas?
Yeah, that's hey, look, fair enough. I think that so much marketing and so much licensing is one in Xbox One. I don't think that they can just drop that name. Although personally, I would just start over. But yeah, I actually think it will just be called Xbox One, and I think that if they're going more towards iterations, I think that it'll just be called Xbox One, and maybe Xbox One 2017 or something along those lines. So
sure, kind of like what they're doing with iPad now, where it doesn't really have a number after it. It's just this is iPad.
The new iPad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's what it's called. New
Xbox One. It could be Xbox One 4K. It could be Xbox One 4K. I mean, Phil Spinnell, he said 4K several times in his announcement, so that could make sense too.
Okay.
But I still like an Xbox 1.5. You're halfway there.
With so that guy, hang on. So I wrote an article last month saying that I personally think the 8th generation started too soon. I think the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 are too underpowered for what we wanted as the next step up. So, is Xbox Scorpio what we should have had a couple of years ago, or even they should have waited on Xbox One and just delivered us Xbox Scorpio?
If they would have delivered, with the price of technology, it gets cheaper over time, but if they would have launched Xbox Scorpio and Xbox One launched, I can't imagine how expensive that would have been.
But what I'm saying is, should Xbox One not have released when it did? Should they have waited another year or two and released Scorpio?
So go
ahead.
I was going to say, so my article, and I read your article. I think it was a great article. My thought would be that it wasn't released too soon. I think it was released too late. The last console cycle went on 10 years. I think at about 8 years you should have released your Xbox One. That would make the Xbox One now 6 years old, rather than just 3.
And then we could have a full console generation step.
Then you have Scorpio come out. So while I agree with your sentiment that it came out too close to needing another console, that could have been solved if hardware, if Microsoft would have just thrown another console out 2 or 3 years. Like, they ran the last console generation into the ground, and I just think that it was working. They were on top. The software was selling relatively well for a while, and they just didn't put time into being innovative. And I feel like that's what happened. It was the longest generation we've ever had in consoles, so it was just way too long.
Sure. I actually agree with Chris. I think it was too long. Sure, Xbox 360 and PS3 sold great, but that's because they were around so long. You didn't really have a choice. If you wanted to play video games, you had to have one of the systems.
Of course. So with that being said, I wish they would have just kept giving me 360 games and said, hey, in 2 or 3 more years, you're going to have a system that's going to blow your mind, and then give us Scorpio rather than give us the stopgap, just a couple years ago.
Sure.
Well, they would have looked like they were before Sony at that point. Like, they just would have looked playing bad to them.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where Sony. See, the thing about Sony is Sony came up in the last half of last generation. So here's the thing. So Microsoft beat the pants off of Sony for maybe 8 years of last generation, and in the last 2 years, Sony literally came back up and made things almost even across the board as far as sales goes. What happens if Xbox released Xbox One 2 or 3 years before that resurgence? Sony would have never had a chance to regain a foothold, and the Xbox would have marched into this generation with a completely different outcome than what we have now, and the fact that Xbox is below sales. And so so they gave Sony the chance to kind of get back into the game, even things out, and then both launching at the same time, it was almost destined to happen. So it went on too long. It was too long of a cycle. Hopefully, with this moving forward, we'll get back on a maybe a 4 to 5 year schedule. I do think the Scorpio may be a year too early, but that's only because Xbox One was a year or two too late. So, if we get Scorpio next year and then maybe 4 to 5 years after that, we get whatever's next. Like, I'm okay with a console every 4 to 5 years.
Sure. Okay. And I guess to end the conversation, just a quick fire question to go off what you said, Chris, for Steve and Kendra. How long is a good lifespan for a console? Do you think 4 or 5 years? Steve, what do you think? How many years is a good span?
I think 5 years is a solid investment then. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're spending 300-400 quid, having that last 5 years is perfectly acceptable.
Sure. Yeah. And Kendra?
5 years.
Sure.
Well, I was going to say, it seems to be just the perfect amount of time.
Sure.
What I would say, though, is that I think it's got to be far more to do with not so much how long the console has been out. It's got to be that technological step. It's got to be a big enough jump between one system and the next system. And that was easier in. I'm sorry that I'm kind of rehashing my article here, but but going from like the Sega, the Nintendo NES to the Super NES, that was a big leap because the technology leap was massive, and going from the Xbox to Xbox 360 or PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 was a big step, but it wasn't as big as the steps that we've had before, and the step up from Xbox 360 to Xbox One and PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 was not that big. It was not that big a step. These console steps are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you need that technological leap, like 4K, like VR. That's when people want a new console.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing that's important here, I think, and Microsoft is addressing it with the idea of a universal platform or no game left behind. On PlayStation, you still can't play PlayStation 3 games. I don't believe, I don't follow it closely, but I don't think that they've, they had that rental service. PlayStation Now, I think, is what it was called.
You have to you can play PlayStation 2 games, but you have to pay for it. It's not like where you can take your PlayStation 2 disc and sling it in your PlayStation 4 and play along.
Exactly. So Xbox One is introduced backwards compatibility. That is going to be forward marching. So any new console, anything that's on the backwards compatibility list is always going to now be playable. And now they're building Scorpio and whatever's next to solidify anything that you own right now on the console, you have access to. We don't know that Sony's doing that. It would make sense that they would, but they've never really done that in the past. The early PS3s could play PS2 games, but that kind of went by the wayside really, really fast. And so if Sony doesn't do a similar thing, like that's a huge misstep for them. Whereas whenever you are upgrading, let's say it is every 4 to 5 years, you're upgrading a console, if you instantly know the moment you plug that console in, you have 200 games sitting there that you can play at your disposal, like that's just value added to a consumer, as opposed to jumping to a new generation where you literally have nothing. You're giving up everything you've played before. So so again, console generations, like Steve said, are getting to be smaller, increments right now. So it's the additional things that they can do that are going to add value in making that transition, and having your games play forward is a huge advantage in that idea.
Sure. Well, hopefully this will be a smooth transition from Xbox One to Xbox Scorpio. But hopefully all of you have enjoyed this conversation on Xbox Scorpio. What do you want to see from Xbox Scorpio? Let us know in the comment section down below. You can also always find us at xboxenthusiast.com. Make sure to find us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at EnthusiastXbox. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Music Play Store, and the Microsoft MP3 Store. So hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will continue to be pumping out more E3 content. So make sure to stick around to our YouTube page. And until next time, we are out.
Later.